Hi there. Welcome to Dreamy Histories channel. Tonight, we're standing in the bitter darkness of a Norwegian winter morning, circa 850 AD. The wind howls through the gaps in your longhouse walls like the screams of the dishonored dead, and you can feel ice crystals forming on your eyelashes as you struggle to open them. Your body aches from sleeping on a dirt floor covered with moldy straw, and something, probably several somethings, are crawling through your matted hair. Here's a fun fact. You probably won't survive past 40, and that's if you're lucky. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. I'd love to know where you're listening from and what time it is there. Drop it in the comments below. Now, let's drift back in time. You're jolted awake by the sound of your father coughing up blood again. It's the lung rot that's been spreading through the settlement since autumn, and you know he won't last another moon cycle. The bed you're lying on is just a raised platform of earth covered with whatever animal skins your family could spare. Most of them infested with lice so aggressive you can actually hear them moving in the quiet moments. Your younger sister whimpers beside you, scratching at the festering sores on her scalp, where the parasites have burrowed deep. The first thing that hits you is the smell. Imagine 40 people crammed into a single long room, none of whom have bathed since summer. Add to that the reek of the animals, goats, pigs, maybe a cow if you're wealthy, living at the other end of the same structure. Their waste mixes with human waste in a primitive trench that runs along one wall. Frozen now, but still emanating a nauseating sweetness that makes your empty stomach churn. This is your wake-up cologne every single morning of your short, brutal life. You reach for the water bucket, but your fingers hit solid ice. Everything liquid has frozen overnight, including the urine in the communal pot. You'll have to break the ice with your bare hands because your only knife is too precious to risk on such mundane tasks. The metal might snap in this cold, and without iron tools, you're basically dead. As you punch through the frozen surface, your knuckles split open, again. These wounds never really heal in winter. They just scab over until tomorrow's ice-breaking ritual tears them fresh. Your mother is already up, of course. She's been awake since the darkest part of night, tending the fire that must never, ever go out. If it does, you'll all freeze to death before morning. She's heating up last night's leftover stew, a generous word for water, with a few stringy pieces of salted mutton and some half-rotten turnips. But here's the thing that modern people don't understand. You're grateful for those rotten turnips. Chow. You're so hungry that your body physically hurts, a deep, gnawing pain that never quite goes away. Historians still argue whether the average Viking consumed around 3,000 calories a day during good times, or if that's just romantic speculation. But everyone agrees that winter meant starvation rations for most. The real terror begins when you hear the dogs barking outside. Not your dogs. Your settlement only has 3, and you know their voices like family. These are strange dogs, which means strange men. Your father, despite his sickness, immediately reaches for his axe. Your mother grabs your sister and shoves her into the storage pit beneath the floorboards. You're old enough to fight. So you get handed a seax, a large knife that's more tool than weapon, but it'll have to do. The thing about Viking raids that Hollywood gets wrong. They weren't always massive naval invasions. Sometimes it was just 15 or 20 desperate men from a neighboring fjord, starving and willing to kill everyone in your longhouse for your meager winter stores. These small-scale attacks were constant, unpredictable, and absolutely terrifying. You might be related to these attackers. Maybe your aunt married into their clan 2 summers ago. Doesn't matter. When it's your family's survival versus theirs, blood ties evaporate like morning mist. Your hands shake as you grip the sayax. Not from fear. Well, not just from fear. You're also shaking from chronic malnutrition. Your diet lacks basic vitamins, and what the scholars now call scurvy is just beginning to set in. Your gums bleed constantly, your joints ache, and bruises appear on your skin for no reason. But you can't think about that now because someone's testing the door, trying to see if the bar is properly set. The waiting is the worst part. You can hear them outside, discussing in low voices whether your longhouse is worth the risk. Maybe they've already hit the farm next to yours. Maybe old Bjorn and his family are already dead. Their throats slit while they slept. You'll find out later, if you survive. For now, you just stand there in the smoky darkness, your bare feet numb on the frozen earth floor, listening to your father wheeze and your mother whisper prayers to gods who seem to enjoy human suffering. This is how every single morning could start in the Viking Age. Not with glorious battles and heroic adventures, but with fear, filth, and the constant calculation of who might try to kill you today. The sagas talk about honor and glory, but your daily reality is counting your family members each dawn to make sure nobody died in their sleep. Then preparing to defend against whoever might want to steal your pathetic pile of preserved fish. The raiders move on, this time. Maybe they found easier prey, or maybe they're just scouting for a larger attack later. You'll never know. Your mother pulls your sister from the pit, brushing beetles and dirt from her hair, and returns to stirring that pitiful stew. Time for breakfast, if you can call it that. You settle onto the bench, trying not to think about what you're about to put in your mouth. The bread, if we're being generous enough to call it bread, looks like a rectangular brick and feels twice as heavy. Your mother baked it 3 weeks ago using the last of the barley flour, mixed with ground pine bark and sawdust to make it stretch. Yes, sawdust. When you're facing 9 months of winter, you eat whatever won't immediately kill you. The Vikings were creative that way. They'd grind up everything from pea husks to acorns, mixing it all into a paste that, once baked, could technically sustain human life. You need both hands to break off a piece, and when you finally manage it, the effort leaves your palms bleeding from the sharp edges. Inside, the bread is a greenish-grey color, shot through with what you hope are just poorly ground herbs, but might actually be mold. Doesn't matter. Mold is practically a seasoning at this point. You've been eating it since October, and your stomach has either adapted or given up protesting. The taste hits you like a physical assault. Imagine chewing on a mixture of dirt, tree bark, and something that died under your house last summer. Your teeth, the ones you still have, scrape against bits of stone that got mixed in during the grinding process. Every Viking adult you know is missing at least a few teeth. And it's not from battle. It's from a lifetime of eating bread that's harder than the grinding stones used to make it. You feel one of your molars wiggle dangerously as you chew. But the bread is practically gourmet compared to what comes next. Your mother ladles out the morning's main course, fermented shark that's been buried underground for 5 months. Hakal, they call it, though you have other words for it that would make a modern person blush. The smell alone could wake the dead, a combination of ammonia, rotting fish, and something indescribably worse. The shark meat is toxic when fresh, so your ancestors figured out that if you bury it and let it rot just right, it becomes edible, barely. You take your first bite and immediately your body revolts. The texture is like chewing on waterlogged leather that's been soaked in urine, which, honestly, isn't far from the truth. The fermentation process that makes the shark safe to eat also makes it taste like concentrated nightmare. But here's the dark joke of Viking cuisine. This is actually one of your better meals. At least it's protein. At least it's not the blood sausage made from whatever the raiders left behind at Bjorn's farm last month. Historians still argue whether the Vikings' diet was actually nutritious despite being revolting, but they're missing the point. Sure, fermented fish provides vitamins and preserved meat offers protein, but when half your food is actively trying to kill you, nutrition becomes secondary to survival. That whale blubber your father is gnawing on? It went rancid 2 months ago. The green tinge isn't herbs. It's bacteria. But throwing food away isn't an option when the next successful hunt might be months away. Speaking of whale blubber, let's talk about the morning delicacy your little sister is enjoying. She's sucking on a piece of blubber the size of her fist, and the oil running down her chin is tinged pink with blood. Not from the whale, from her mouth. Scurvy has loosened her teeth so badly that eating anything tougher than porridge makes her gums bleed. The blubber provides essential fats her body desperately needs, but it also coats her throat with a rancid film that'll make everything else taste like low tide for the rest of the day. Your older brother staggers in from checking the animals, ice crystals in his beard crackling as they melt. He's carrying what passes for fresh meat. A rabbit he found frozen solid in one of his trap lines. Dead for days, maybe weeks, but the cold preserved it. Sort of. As it thaws by the fire, you notice the eyes have that milky, sunken look that means it was sick before it died. Probably the same wasting disease that's been killing off the wild game all winter. Your mother will boil it anyway, adding it to tomorrow's stew, where the flavor of decay will blend with everything else. The really insidious thing about Viking food wasn't just that it tasted horrible, it's that it was actively dangerous. Every meal was a gamble. That preserved cod might harbor parasites that'll eat you from the inside out. The fermented cabbage could have gone from safely rotted to actually poison, without anyone noticing. And don't get started on the mushrooms. One bad identification and your whole family spends their last hours hallucinating while their organs shut down. You wash down your breakfast with the morning's beverage, sour beer that's more water than alcohol, flavored with bog myrtle and juniper in a failed attempt to mask the taste of the larvae swimming in it. Yes, larvae. Protein is protein. And besides, the alcohol might kill some of the other things living in your cup. Your mother makes everyone drink it, especially the children. It's safer than water, which comes from the same stream where you dump your waste and you're dead. By the time breakfast is over, your stomach is cramping, not from hunger this time, but from the war between all the different bacteria you've just ingested. This is normal. Vikings didn't have sensitive stomachs because anyone with a sensitive stomach died in childhood. Natural selection at its most brutal. You'll spend the next hour fighting not to vomit, because throwing up means wasting precious calories you can't afford to lose. Your stomach's still churning from breakfast. You hear your uncle's voice booming across the settlement. Shield wall practice, all boys 7 winters and older. Your younger brother, who just turned 7 last month, goes pale beneath the dirt on his face. This is his first time. You remember your own first time. The broken nose, the cracked ribs, the week you spent pissing blood. Good times. The training ground is a patch of frozen mud between the longhouses, slick with ice and last night's snow. About 20 boys gather, ranging from terrified 7-year-olds to cocky teenagers who think they're already warriors. Your uncle, missing his left eye and 2 fingers from his shield hand, surveys the group like a wolf eyeing sheep. He's the weapons master, not because he's the best fighter, but because He's the only one who survived long enough to get old. Today, he announces, hefting a real iron sword, not some wooden practice weapon, we learn why the weak die young. This isn't inspirational speaking. It's a simple statement of fact. The Vikings didn't believe in gradually working up to danger. You learn to fight with real weapons because in real battle, that's what you'll face. The fact that you might die during training. Well, better to discover you're not warrior material now than when Danish raiders are trying to separate your head from your shoulders. Your little brother gets paired with a 9-year-old who already has the dead eyes of someone who's seen too much. The older boy doesn't hesitate. His first swing catches your brother across the temple with the flat of his blade, sending him sprawling into the mud. Blood immediately starts pooling beneath his head. Your uncle nods approvingly. Good. Now he learns to keep his shield up. This is the insanity of Viking childhood. You're expected to be a functional killer before you've lost all your baby teeth. By 7, boys are handling real weapons. By 10, you're expected to form a competent shield wall. By 13, you might be raiding. The mortality rate for this education is something historians still argue about, but based on the number of child skeletons found with healing blade wounds, it wasn't pretty. Your turn comes to face Eric, 2 years older and built like a miniature version of his blacksmith father. He's been training since he was 5. His father started him early after his older brothers died in a raid. Eric doesn't fight like a child playing warrior. He fights like someone who understands that violence is a language and fluency means survival. The first thing he does is kick mud in your eyes. While you're blinded, his shield edge catches you in the throat. You go down gagging, and suddenly his knee is on your chest, a very real blade pressed against your neck. Dead, your uncle announces flatly. Get up and die again until you learn. This is your morning, every morning, getting beaten bloody by other children while adults watch and critique your failure to avoid death. The training is brutal because life is brutal. There's no referee, no rules, except try not to actually kill each other. Try not to, not don't. The distinction matters when Sven, the Jarl's son, breaks Olaf's arm so badly the bone pokes through the skin. Olaf screams until he passes out. They drag him away. Training continues. The weapons are another layer of insanity. You're 7 years old, and they hand you a seax that weighs nearly as much as your baby sister. The edge is sharp enough to shave with, if Vikings shaved, which they don't. Your arms shake trying to hold it steady, but showing weakness just makes you a target. So you grip it until your knuckles go white, and try not to think about how easily it could open your belly if you fall wrong. But it's not just weapons training. They're teaching you to be casually brutal. When Bjorn's son falls and starts crying, your uncle kicks him in the ribs. Enemies don't care about your tears, he says. The boy, maybe 8 years old, struggles to his feet, blood bubbling from his nose. This time when he raises his shield, his eyes have changed. Something soft is dying in there, replaced by something harder. This is the point. They're not making warriors. They're unmaking children. The shield wall training is where things get truly demented. 20 boys, pressed together, shields overlapping, while the older teenagers run at you full speed. Real weapons, real force, real consequences. The boy next to you, you think his name is Ulf, takes a spear thrust that was meant to go over his shield, but didn't. It punches through his shoulder, and suddenly your shield is slippery with his blood. He drops, screaming. The wall breaks. Everyone who breaks formation gets beaten. You learn about pain in increments. The slice across your knuckles that makes you drop your sword. The pommels strike to your skull that leaves you seeing double for days. The moment when Eric's practice sword, and remember, these are real swords, just blunted, catches you between the ribs and something inside goes crunch. You spend the next month breathing in shallow gasps, praying to gods who seem to enjoy child suffering that your lung hasn't been punctured. Here's a fun detail archaeologists have discovered. Viking children's bones show the same pattern of healing fractures as adult warriors. Think about that. 6-year-olds with the same injury patterns as grown men who raid for a living. Your childhood isn't preparation for violence, it is violence, served daily with a side of casual cruelty. The psychological training is subtler but worse. They're teaching you to watch suffering without flinching. When your brother gets his nose broken, again, you're not allowed to help him. Helping is weakness. Mercy is weakness. Compassion? That'll get you killed faster than a dull blade. So you stand there, watching blood freeze on his chin, and learn to feel nothing. By the time morning training ends, 3 boys are too injured to walk. 1 might not survive. That spear wound is deep and already showing signs of infection. Your uncle seems satisfied. "Tomorrow," he announces, "we practice with axes." Your little brother limps over to you. 1 eye swollen shut, nose clearly broken. He's trying not to cry. Crying means extra training. Crying means you're weak. And weak boys don't live to become weak men. While you boys were bleeding in the mud, your mother and sister have been engaged in their own form of slow death, though theirs involves fewer weapons and more back-breaking labor that grinds bodies into dust over decades rather than minutes. Your sister, barely 14, already moves like an old woman, her spine curved from hauling water buckets that weigh nearly as much as she does. You find them in the weaving house, where the women spend winter days when they're not cooking, cleaning, tending the sick, preparing food, mending clothes, or any of the 1,000 other tasks that keep everyone from freezing or starving. The loom weights clack rhythmically as your mother works, her fingers cracked and bleeding from the coarse wool. She's been at it since before dawn, and she'll be at it long after you've collapsed into sleep. Here's what the sagas don't mention when they sing of fair Viking maidens. Your sister's hands look like an old warrior's, scarred and weathered from years of spinning rough wool into thread. She started when she was 5, and by 14, her fingertips have been worn smooth, the whorls of her fingerprints erased by endless friction. The lanolin in the wool has kept her hands from completely falling apart, but it can't prevent the deep cracks that split open every winter, bleeding into the yarn she spins. Your mother interrupts her weaving to vomit into a bucket. She's pregnant again, her 8th pregnancy, though only 4 of you survived past infancy. Viking women spent most of their adult lives either pregnant, recovering from childbirth, or nursing. It's a biological death sentence played out in slow motion. She wipes her mouth and returns to the loom without comment. What's there to say? The baby will come whether she rests or not, and the weaving needs to be done or you'll all freeze next winter. The real nightmare of being a Viking woman wasn't the lack of rights. They actually had more legal protections than most medieval women. They could divorce, own property, run households. No. The nightmare was the sheer physical destruction of their bodies. By 25, most women looked 40. By 35, if they lived that long, they were ancient crones, not from age, but from the unrelenting assault of work and childbirth. Your aunt shuffles in, and you try not to stare at her belly. It's been swollen for months now, but not with child. The growth inside her is something else, something that makes her scream at night. The healing woman says it's a punishment from the gods. But you've seen enough animals butchered to recognize the smell that follows her. Something is rotting inside her body. She'll be dead by spring, leaving behind 6 children and a husband who'll have her replacement picked out before her funeral pyre stops smoking. Back to work, your mother says, noticing you lingering, but you've been assigned to help with the wool preparation today, a task that makes weapons training look pleasant. First, you have to clean the raw fleece, which means picking out the shit, literally. Sheep don't stop defecating just because their wool is growing, and by the time shearing comes, the fleece is matted with months of dried feces, burrs, twigs, and sometimes dead insects. Your sister shows you how to card the wool, using 2 paddle-like tools covered in metal teeth. It's like trying to comb the world's worst hair tangle while the hair fights back. The lanolin makes everything greasy, the smell makes you gag, and the metal teeth have a tendency to catch skin as easily as wool. By the time you've processed 1 basket, your arms are screaming and your hands look like you've been fighting cats. But here's the truly sick part. This is the easy season for women. Come spring, when you boys get to go raiding and have adventures, they'll be doing the ploughing. Yes, Viking women pulled ploughs. When the men were gone Viking, it's a verb, remember. Someone had to break the frozen ground and plant the crops. That someone was usually a pregnant woman with a toddler strapped to her back and another child clinging to her skirts. Your mother tells stories while she works, her voice hoarse from the smoke that fills every building. She talks about her friend Astrid, who died last harvest, not in some dramatic way. She just worked herself to death. One day she was bringing in the barley, racing against the rain that would rot the crop. The next day she couldn't get out of bed. 3 days later, she was gone. Her body had simply given up, worn out at 28 years old. The sagas love to talk about Viking women as peace weavers, marrying to forge alliances between families. What they don't mention is that these alliances meant being shipped off to a stranger's household, where you're expected to immediately start producing heirs. Your cousin Sigrid was married at 13 to a man 3 times her age. She died in childbirth at 15, which was considered a pretty good run, all things considered. Your sister's fingers never stop moving as she spins, but her eyes are fixed on something distant. She knows what's coming. Next summer, maybe the one after, your father will announce her marriage. Some man she's never met will pay a bride price, and she'll be bundled off to squeeze out babies until her body gives up. If she's lucky, her husband won't beat her too badly. If she's very lucky, she'll die quickly in childbirth rather than slowly from the accumulated damage of yearly pregnancies. The healing woman stops by to check on your mother, pressing her belly with hands that have delivered hundreds of babies and lost almost as many mothers. The baby sits wrong, she announces grimly. Breech births in the Viking age were death sentences more often than not. Your mother just nods and keeps weaving. What else can she do? The cloth won't make itself. And if she dies in childbirth, at least her children will have warm clothes to remember her by. Historians still argue whether Viking women had it better or worse than their European counterparts. But that's like arguing whether it's better to drown in cold water or warm. Dead is dead, and Viking women died young, died hard, and died knowing their daughters would face the same fate. Your sister's bent spine and bleeding hands aren't battle scars, but they're wounds all the same, earned in a different kind of warfare, the slow, grinding battle against starvation, cold, and the relentless demands of survival. The scream that pierces the morning air isn't human, exactly. It's the sound a person makes when they've forgotten they were ever anything more than meat and pain. You're helping your mother card wool when you hear it, And even she pauses, her weathered face tightening. That's coming from the boat shed where they're building the Jarl's new longship. Someone's teaching the new thralls their place in the world. You've grown up around slaves. Sorry. Thralls. As if a prettier word makes it better. Every successful Viking family owns at least a few. They're as common as chickens and treated about the same. Except chickens don't try to run away and don't need to be broken first. Your family owns 3. An Irish woman taken in a raid 5 summers ago. Her daughter who was born here and knows no other life. And a man whose tongue was cut out before you were born. So you'll never know where he came from. But the screaming from the boat shed is different. That's fresh merchandise. Probably from the last raid on the English coast. You wander over, drawn by that sick curiosity that Viking culture encourages. Can't be squeamish about suffering when suffering is the primary export. What you see makes even your violence-deadened mind recoil a little. The new thrall is staked out on the ground, and they're branding him. Not a quick burn like you'd mark cattle, but slow, deliberate artistry. The iron has some kind of pattern, maybe runes, maybe just decorative swirls. The overseer is taking his time, making sure the mark is deep enough that it'll never fade. The smell of burning flesh mixes with shit and terror sweat. The thrall has soiled himself, which just makes the overseer laugh. This one said he was a merchant. The overseer explains to the gathered crowd, pressing the iron down again. Said he could read and write, thought that made him valuable. Another press, another scream. Now he'll carry his real value on his face forever. This is the part of Viking society the romantic stories skip over. It ran on slavery. Not metaphorically, not partially, but fundamentally. Historians still argue about exact percentages, but somewhere between 10 and 30% of Viking-age Scandinavia were slaves. That's not counting the ones worked to death and replaced like broken tools. Your entire economy depends on raiding other people and dragging them back in chains. The Irish woman in your household, Bridget, watches from the doorway of the weaving house. Her face is carefully blank. Thralls learn not to show emotion if they want to keep their teeth. She's been here 5 years, speaks decent Norse now, and has never once tried to run. Where would she go? Everyone for 100 miles would recognize her as property and return her for a reward. If she was lucky, they'd only cut off a foot as punishment. The branded man is dragged away to begin his new life, which won't be long. Male thralls on construction projects have a life expectancy measured in seasons, not years. He'll haul massive oak logs through frozen mud, dive in icy water to set support posts, work until his hands are raw stumps. When he collapses, they'll roll his body into the same foundation he was building. The archaeologists find them sometimes. Slave skeletons crushed beneath Viking-age structures, their bones showing signs of brutal labor and malnutrition. Your family's male thrall shuffles past, carrying firewood. You don't know his name. He doesn't have one, just the mute. His arms are a roadmap of scars, and not from accidents. When thralls misbehave, cutting pieces off is standard punishment. A finger for laziness, a hand for theft, tongue for talking back. He's missing 3 fingers and, obviously, his tongue, but he's still alive, which makes him either very lucky or very careful. The really sick thing is how normalized it all is. Bridget's daughter, maybe 10 years old, plays with your little sister sometimes. They braid each other's hair and share dolls made of scraps. Then your sister remembers that her friend is property, not people, and the playing stops. The girl will grow up knowing that when she bleeds for the first time, she becomes breeding stock. Some warrior will use her to make more thralls, And if she's pretty enough, maybe the master himself will take an interest. Lucky her. You've heard your parents discussing buying another thrall. The conversation is exactly like debating whether to get another cow. Can we afford the initial price? Will the work output justify the food input? What's the injury risk? Your mother wants a young woman for household work. Your father's thinking about a strong man for field labor. Neither considers that they're discussing buying a human being because in Viking society, thralls aren't human beings. They're livestock that can talk. Here's a fun detail the sagas leave out. When a wealthy Viking died, his thralls often went with him, not metaphorically. They'd strangle a few slaves and bury them with the master, because even in death, a Viking lord needs servants. Your grandfather's funeral included 2 thralls, both killed with surprising casualness. 1 minute they're standing there, the next someone's got a rope around their neck. They didn't even struggle much. After years of slavery, death probably seemed like a vacation. The worst part? The children born into slavery. Bridget's daughter has never known freedom, never even conceived of it. She'll grow up, have babies who are automatically slaves, and die thinking this is just how the world works. The cycle continues forever, grinding human beings into dust to keep the Viking economy running. Your nice wool clothes, woven by thralls, the wood for your longhouse, cut and hauled by thralls, that bread that tastes like suffering. The grain was planted and harvested by people who'd get beaten for eating a handful of it. You watch the overseer testing another branding iron in the fire, preparing for the next thrall. There are 6 more to process today, he mentions casually. 6 more people about to learn that their lives as humans are over. Now they're just particularly clever animals, worth less than a good horse but more than a chicken. The math of misery, calculated in flesh and fear. As you walk back to the weaving house, you pass the mute thrall again. For just a moment, your eyes meet. There's nothing there. No anger, no sadness, no hope, just empty acceptance. They've broken him so completely that he can't even imagine being anything other than property. That's the true horror of Viking slavery. Not just owning people's bodies, but crushing their spirits so thoroughly that they forget they ever had one. The stench hits you before you even enter the healing house. A mixture of rotting flesh, herb smoke, and human waste that makes your eyes water. Your cousin Thorvald is lying on a blood-soaked table, what's left of his right leg looking like something a dog chewed and spat out. He took an axe to the shin during yesterday's Holmgang duel, and now the wound has gone bad. The black streaks running up his thigh tell everyone what they already know. He'll be dead by tomorrow unless they take the leg. The healing woman, Gertrude, is preparing her tools, and calling them tools is generous. A saw that's usually used for cutting firewood, now washed in water that's definitely not clean. A collection of iron implements that look more suitable for torture than medicine. And her prized possession, a leather-wrapped stick for Thorvald to bite down on so he doesn't bite through his own tongue when the cutting starts. "Hold him down," she orders, and 4 men move to pin Thorvald to the table. He's delirious with fever, muttering about ships made of fingernails and wolves eating the sun, typical fever dreams. Though in Viking mythology, those nightmares might come true. Your father grips Thorvald's shoulders while others secure his arms and remaining leg. There's no hesitation, no discussion of alternatives. Everyone here has seen enough infected wounds to know that amputation is the only chance. And even that's being optimistic. Gertrude doesn't waste time with ceremonial nonsense. She pours strong ale over the sore, not for sterilization, a concept that won't exist for another 1,000 years. But because she believes alcohol drives out evil spirits. Then she starts cutting. The sound is worse than the screaming. It's wet and grinding, metal on bone, accompanied by the splash of blood hitting the packed earth floor. Thorvald thrashes so hard that his shoulder pops out of joint with an audible crack. You've been assigned to hold the bucket. Someone has to catch the blood for later use in healing potions. Yes, they'll actually make him drink his own blood mixed with herbs, because Viking medicine operates on the principle that if it's disgusting enough, it must be powerful. As the leg comes free with a final, horrible snap of sinew, you try not to look at the cross-section of meat and bone, but you can't help noticing the maggots already writhing in the wound. They've been eating him alive from the inside. Here's what passes for anesthesia. More ale, forced down Thorvald's throat until he chokes. Maybe some henbane or mushrooms if he's lucky, though the dosage is always a guess. Too little, and he feels everything. Too much, and his heart stops. Viking healers have all the medical knowledge of particularly creative butchers, which is essentially what they are. Gertrude learned her craft by watching her mother, who learned from her mother, all the way back to the first woman who figured out that people leak less when you stuff mud in the holes. The stump needs to be sealed, and this is where things get properly medieval. Gertrude heats an iron pot until it glows cherry red, then presses it against the raw wound. The sizzle of cooking meat fills the room, and the smell, gods, the smell is something you'll taste in the back of your throat for days. Thorvald passes out, which is a mercy. His body goes limp, and for a moment everyone thinks he's died. But no, his chest still rises and falls. Lucky him. Now we pack it, Gertrude announces, producing her medicine bag. The contents would make a modern pharmacist weep. Horse dung mixed with honey, the Vikings' antibiotic of choice, crushed beetles, tree bark, and something that looks suspiciously like grave dirt. She packs this nightmare paste into the wound, then wraps it with cloth that's been boiled in urine, because of course it has. In Viking medicine, if it comes from a body, it's probably therapeutic. Your little brother got kicked by a horse last week, leaving a gash across his forehead that immediately went yellow with pus. The treatment? Gertrude sewed it shut with a needle made from a fish bone and thread spun from horsehair, then packed it with moss soaked in lamb's blood. He's been feverish ever since, seeing things that aren't there, but that's considered normal healing. If you're not hallucinating from infection, are you even really injured? The healing house is full of other patients, each one a testament to Viking medical creativity. There's Eric, whose broken arm was set so badly it now bends in 3 places. The healing woman's solution? Break it again and try to do better this time. There's Olga, whose persistent cough is being treated with daily doses of fermented seal lung. And in the corner, behind a curtain, is someone whose screams suggest they're having teeth pulled with the same tongs used to handle hot iron in the forge. But here's the really insane part. Some of their treatments actually worked, purely by accident. Those maggots in Thorvald's wound, they only eat dead tissue, so they're actually cleaning the infection. The honey in the horse dung has antimicrobial properties. The urine is sterile when fresh. They've stumbled onto legitimate medical principles through sheer trial and error, building their knowledge on a foundation of corpses who didn't survive the experiments. Gertrude is checking on another patient now, a woman whose childbirth went wrong 3 days ago. The baby came out backward and blue, already dead, but something tore inside the mother. She's been bleeding ever since, and the smell from between her legs suggests everything's rotting up there. The treatment? Pack the wound with cobwebs and raven feathers, Then have her drink a potion made from ergot-infected rye. The ergot might stop the bleeding by making her womb contract. It might also make her hallucinate so badly she claws her own eyes out. Viking medicine is always a gamble. Your uncle arrives, carrying his son who fell from a roof and hasn't woken up since. The boy's skull has a dent you could fit your thumb into, and one pupil is blown wide while the other is a pinpoint. Modern medicine would recognize this as a traumatic brain injury requiring immediate surgery. Gertrude recognizes it as the sleeping sickness and prescribes drilling a hole in his skull to let the evil spirits out. She actually has a drill for this, a hand-operated nightmare that looks like a corkscrew had a baby with a spear. The process is exactly as horrific as you'd imagine, grinding through skull bone while the unconscious child twitches and moans. The sudden give when you break through. The spurt of blood and clear fluid. The wet, sucking sound as she probes the hole with a bronze needle, looking for the evil spirits that must surely be causing this. Historians still argue about Viking medical knowledge, pointing to detailed wound treatments in the sagas and evidence of successfully healed injuries. What they don't emphasize enough is the survival rate. For every warrior who lived through an amputation, 10 died of shock. For every woman who survived childbirth complications, a dozen bled out on birthing stools. Viking medicine was basically battlefield triage performed by people who thought disease was caused by elves. October arrives like a death sentence. You know what's coming? 5 months of darkness, cold that kills, and the slow madness that creeps in when 40 people are trapped in a single room with nothing but their own stink and demons for company. Your father has already started rationing food, calculating how many of you might starve before spring. It's simple math. The stores divided by mouths to feed, with a margin for error that assumes at least 2 family members won't make it through winter. The first blizzard hits before you're ready. It's always before you're ready. One day you're rushing to bring in the last of the barley. The next you can't see your hand in front of your face for the driving snow. The temperature drops so fast that the water bucket your sister was carrying freezes solid before she makes it back to the longhouse. She stumbles through the door with her hands frozen to the handle, crying as your mother pries her fingers loose, leaving skin behind on the ice. Now begins the real Viking experience. Not the summer raids and adventures, but months of slowly going insane in the dark. The longhouse becomes your entire world, and what a world it is. 43 people crammed into a space meant for 20, plus a dozen animals at the far end because letting them freeze means no milk, no eggs, no emergency meat when things get desperate. The smell after just 1 week would make a modern person vomit. After a month, you don't even notice it anymore. Here's what the sagas don't tell you about Viking winters. The darkness drives people mad. Not metaphorically, literally, clinically insane. The sun barely rises, and when it does, it's too dangerous to go outside anyway. So you sit in the smoky dimness, listening to the wind howl and your neighbor's minds crack. Old Bjorn starts talking to his dead wife. Your aunt begins pulling her hair out in clumps. The thrall who seemed so broken yesterday suddenly attacks your father with an eating knife, screaming about dragons under his skin. The cold is a living thing that wants you dead. It creeps through every gap in the walls, turning your breath to ice crystals that fall like snow inside the house. You sleep in piles like dogs. Entire families huddle together under every fur and cloth they own, and still wake up with blue lips and fingernails. Your grandmother doesn't wake up at all one morning, frozen solid despite being surrounded by warm bodies. It takes 3 men to pry her corpse loose from the sleeping pile, She's stuck to your cousin with ice. Food becomes an obsession that borders on madness. Remember that fermented shark from breakfast? By January, you kill someone for a piece. The stored grain is carefully rationed, but there's never enough. You're eating one meal a day if you're lucky, and that meal is usually some variation of whatever hasn't rotted yet soup. The preserved fish has maggots now, but protein is protein. The stored vegetables have gone soft and black, but you eat them anyway. Starvation makes everything edible. Your mother tries to maintain some semblance of normal life. She organizes storytelling sessions, which quickly devolve into arguments about whose grandfather was the greatest warrior. She attempts to teach the younger children weaving, but their fingers are too stiff with cold to manage the threads. Everything is harder in winter. Threading a needle becomes an hour-long ordeal when you can't feel your fingertips. Taking a shit means risking frostbite on parts you really don't want to lose. The real entertainment comes from watching people slowly lose their minds. Your uncle, a seasoned raider who's faced Saxon shield walls without flinching, develops a terror of the shadows in the corners. He's convinced they're moving, reaching for him with fingers made of darkness. He starts sleeping with his back to the wall, sword across his lap. By December, he stabbed 3 shadow demons that turned out to be family members getting up to piss. Cabin fever in a Viking longhouse isn't just being bored. It's being trapped with everyone you know, while they gradually transform into nightmare versions of themselves. Your sweet little sister starts biting people who get too close to her food. Your mother rocks endlessly, humming the same 3 notes. Your brother hasn't spoken in weeks, just stares at the fire with eyes that reflect something broken inside. The worst part is the wind. It never stops, day after day, night after night. It screams around the longhouse like all the dead of summer have come back to accuse you. Sometimes it sounds like voices, sometimes it sounds like your name. After 2 months, you start answering back. Everyone does. Full conversations with the wind become normal. It's either that or acknowledge the growing certainty that you're all going to die in this wooden tomb. By midwinter, the food situation is desperate. The calculation your father made in October needs adjusting. You're eating more than expected because the cold burns calories just keeping you alive. The solution is typically Viking in its brutal practicality. The weakest thrall disappears one night. No one asks where. The soup the next day has more meat than usual. Everyone eats. Everyone knows. No one speaks. This is when the real Viking psychological torture begins. The waiting. Waiting for someone to snap completely and need to be put down. Waiting for the food to run out. Waiting for the cold to finally win. You can't leave. Can't escape, can't do anything but exist in this nightmare of smoke and shadows and slowly starving bodies. The sagas talk about warriors going berserk in battle, but the real insanity happens during these endless winters, watching your family transform into hollow-eyed strangers. Your cousin starts eating his own fingers, not metaphorically, literally gnawing on them until they bleed. Says he can taste summer in his blood. Your aunt collects her own hair as it falls out, weaving it into little dolls that she whispers secrets to. The children have stopped playing entirely. They just sit and stare, old eyes in young faces, learning that survival means enduring hell for months at a time. And through it all, the cold waits outside, patient as death. Sometimes you hear something large walking on the roof, probably just snow sliding off, but maybe not. Maybe it's the frost giants your grandmother swears she saw last winter. Maybe it's your ancestors, frozen solid and jealous of your warmth. After 3 months in the dark, anything seems possible. Reality gets negotiable when you're slowly going mad. The screaming starts before dawn, but this isn't the usual winter madness. This is different, primal, ecstatic, terrifying. Your cousin Ragnar has been fasting for 3 days, sitting naked in the snow beyond the longhouse, eating handfuls of mushrooms that grew on the corpse of a hanged man. Now he's back, and his transformation into a berserker is complete. His eyes roll back, showing only whites. Foam drips from his mouth mixed with blood where he's chewed through his own lips, and he's making sounds that no human throat should produce. This is what the sagas glorify, the legendary berserker rage that made Viking warriors unstoppable. What they don't mention is that going berserk isn't some controlled battle technique. It's deliberately driving yourself insane through starvation, poison, and psychological torture until your mind snaps and something else takes control. Something that doesn't care about pain, fear, or even survival. Something that just wants to tear the world apart with its bare hands. Ragnar is gnawing on his shield now, splinters driving into his gums, blood streaming down his chin. The other warriors give him space. You don't get close to a berserker in the grip of the fury unless you want to die. He's beyond recognition, beyond human. The mushrooms, probably some combination of fly agaric and whatever grows on corpses, have opened doorways in his mind that should stay closed. He sees enemies everywhere. The smoke from the fire becomes dragons. His own shadow is trying to kill him. Your uncle, the one who stabs shadow demons, watches approvingly. Good, he grunts. The bear spirit is strong in him. This is considered a positive development. Your cousin deliberately poisoned himself into violent psychosis, and the adults are nodding like proud parents at a child's first steps. Welcome to Viking warrior culture, where madness isn't a bug, it's a feature. The preparation for creating berserkers starts young. Remember that brutal training from childhood? That was just the foundation. The real conditioning involves systematically breaking down every human impulse towards self-preservation. They lock young warriors in burial mounds overnight. They make them eat the hearts of wolves and bears, raw and dripping. They force them to fight while wearing the skins of dead animals until they forget they're human and become the beast. But the mushrooms are where things get properly demented. Historians still argue about exactly what cocktail of psychedelics the Vikings used. But whatever it was, it didn't just lower inhibitions. It fundamentally rewired the brain. Ragnar isn't pretending to be a bear. In his broken mind, he is a bear. He moves on all fours now, snarling and snapping at anyone who comes close. When someone tosses him a chunk of raw horse meat, he tears into it with his teeth, shaking his head like a predator breaking prey's neck. The other candidates for berserker status watch and learn. There's Bjorn's son, who's been practicing by cutting himself with knives until he doesn't flinch anymore. There's Eric, who spent last summer living with the wolves in the forest, learning to hunt with his teeth. They're all racing toward the same goal, to break their minds so thoroughly that fear and pain become foreign concepts. Here's the part the sagas really don't talk about. What happens after? Ragnar's rage will last maybe 6 hours. Then comes the crash. He'll collapse wherever he stands, sometimes for days. When he wakes up, if he wakes up, he won't remember what he did. The other warriors will fill him in. How he bit through Sven's leather armor, how he lifted a man over his head and tore him in half, how 3 enemies fled rather than face him. They won't mention that he also attacked 2 of his own shield brothers and had to be beaten unconscious with axe handles. The physical cost is devastating. Berserkers age like milk in the sun. Their bodies can't handle the repeated stress of going full psychotic. Hearts give out. Joints tear from inhuman exertions. Most don't live past 30, and the ones who do are shambling wrecks. Minds permanently fractured, jumping at shadows and talking to people who aren't there. But hey, they die as legendary warriors, so that's apparently worth it. You watch your uncle preparing his own berserker cocktail, mushrooms, strong ale, and something he won't identify but smells like rotting flesh. He's done this dozens of times, and it shows. Half his teeth are gone from shield biting. His arms are a maze of scars, some from enemies but most self-inflicted during rages. He can't sleep without nightmares anymore, screaming about the things he sees when the mushroom doorways won't quite close. The younger boys watch in awe as Ragnar demonstrates his new immunity to pain by holding his hand in the fire until the skin bubbles and chars. He's laughing, but it's not human laughter. It's the sound of something that's transcended fear by leaving humanity behind entirely. This is what they aspire to become. Not warriors, but weapons. Living weapons that can be pointed at enemies and released like rabid dogs. The really sick part is how casual it all is. Your mother continues weaving while Ragnar froths and screams 10 feet away. Your sister steps around him to fetch water, careful not to make eye contact. Berserkers in fury will attack anything that challenges them, and existing in their line of sight counts as a challenge. This is just Tuesday in a Viking settlement. Someone's always going berserk, coming down from berserk, or preparing to go berserk. By midday, Ragnar has progressed to the violent stage. He needs to kill something, anything, or the rage will turn inward and he'll tear himself apart. They release a captured thrall into the training ground. Some poor English merchant taken in last summer's raid. The man tries to run, but where can he go? Ragnar catches him in 3 bounds, moving with inhuman speed. What happens next makes your brutal childhood training look like gentle play. The thrall stops screaming surprisingly quickly. Shock, probably. Or maybe Ragnar crushed his windpipe first. This is the glorious berserker tradition the sagas celebrate. Not noble warriors achieving superhuman feats through courage and skill, but broken men turned into rabid animals through systematic poisoning and psychological torture. They're weapons that can't be sheathed, bombs that might explode in any direction. Sure, they're terrifying in battle. They're also terrifying at dinner, at religious ceremonies, at any gathering where sudden psychotic violence might be inconvenient. Your father is talking about sending you to train with the berserkers next summer. The idea makes your empty stomach clench. You've seen what comes back from that training, if anything comes back at all. Empty eyes, broken minds, bodies that only know how to destroy. But refusing isn't really an option. In Viking society, dying gloriously is better than living shamefully. Even if glorious means eating poison mushrooms until your mind shatters and spending your short life as a rabid animal in human skin. The call comes at dawn. Longships sail at high tide. Your stomach drops even as excitement surges through your chest. This is it, your first real raid. Not just coastal trading, but proper Viking. The target is a monastery on the English coast. 3 days hard sailing if the winds cooperate. You'll be crammed onto a ship with 60 other men. And the word crammed doesn't begin to describe the nightmare you're about to endure. The longship looks magnificent from shore, sleek as a snake, dragon head proud at the prow, up close. It's a different story. This floating coffin is maybe 70 feet long and 16 feet at its widest. Now imagine packing 64 men into that space, along with their weapons, shields, food, water, and plunder on the way back. There are no cabins, no shelter, no privacy. You'll be sitting on a sea chest that doubles as your rowing bench, sleeping where you sit, shitting over the side if you're lucky enough to get a turn at the rail. Loading begins, and you quickly understand the hierarchy. The experienced raiders get the spots near the center where the motion is least violent. You and the other first-timers are shoved toward the bow and stern, where every wave will send you flying. Your seat is a wooden chest containing spare sail material. It's already soaked with seawater and what smells suspiciously like old vomit. This will be your home for the next week. The first few hours aren't terrible. You're still in the fjord, protected from ocean swells. You even manage to feel like a proper Viking warrior, pulling your oar in rhythm with the others. Then you hit open water, and everything goes to hell. The first real wave lifts the bow 20 feet before slamming it down hard enough to rattle your teeth. Your stomach lurches. The man next to you doesn't even try to make it to the side. He vomits directly onto his feet. By nightfall, half the crew is violently seasick. The other half are just regular sick from the contaminated water and rotting food. There's nowhere to escape the smell of 60 unwashed men continuously vomiting, pissing, and shitting. Yeah, shitting. You try to hang your ass over the side, but in rough seas, that's a good way to get washed overboard. So you use a bucket that gets passed around and theoretically emptied, but often spills. The deck becomes a slurry of human waste, seawater, and vomit that washes back and forth with each roll of the ship. Sleep is impossible. You're soaked to the skin from spray and rain. Your hands are raw from rowing, blistered and bleeding. The man pressed against your left side has some kind of fever and keeps muttering about eating his own children. The one on your right hasn't stopped shitting liquid for 2 days. Dysentery from bad water. You try to doze sitting up, but every wave threatens to pitch you overboard. Veterans sleep in shifts, one man holding another's belt to keep him from rolling into the sea. The food situation makes your winter starvation diet look like a feast. Hard bread that's more wood than wheat. Dried fish so salty it makes your tongue swell. Water that tastes like the barrel it's been sitting in for months, with chunks of green slime floating in it. But here's the real kicker. You have to ration even this disgusting fare because no one knows how long you'll be at sea. Bad winds could stretch a 3-day journey to 2 weeks. By day 3, people start breaking. The close quarters, constant motion, and complete lack of privacy drive men to the edge. Fights break out over nothing, someone's foot touching another's leg, an accidental elbow during rowing. The Jarl's enforcer breaks them up with an iron bar to the skull. Can't have the crew killing each other before you reach the target. That's bad for business. Your rowing position means you're staring at the back of Olaf the Large for hours at a time. You become intimately familiar with every boil on his neck, every louse crawling through his hair. When he inevitably gets seasick, you're perfectly positioned to catch the spray. This is your view for 16 hours a day, the ass end of another man who hasn't bathed since last summer. Historians love to talk about Viking navigation skills, how they use crystals to find the sun and ravens to find land. What they don't mention is what happens when those methods fail. Getting lost at sea in a longship isn't romantic. It's a death sentence. No more water except what you can catch from rain. No more food except what you can fish. And good luck fishing in storm seas. You've heard stories of crews drawing lots to see who gets eaten first. Everyone laughs about those stories. No one makes eye contact. The storms are worst. The sail comes down, and you row directly into mountainous waves to keep from capsizing. Water crashes over the bow with each surge, filling the ship faster than you can bail. Everyone not rowing is scooping water with helmets, bowls, their bare hands, anything to keep from sinking. Your arms feel like they're being torn from their sockets. But stopping means death for everyone. So you row through the pain, through the exhaustion, through the certain knowledge that one bad wave will send you all to the bottom. Personal hygiene stops existing after the first day. You piss where you sit because getting to the rail means climbing over 20 men who might knife you for stepping on them. Shitting is a group activity. 3 men holding the shitter so he doesn't fall overboard while he sprays liquid feces into the wind, hopefully missing the ship. Everyone has lice. Everyone has skin infections from the constant wet. Everyone has crotch rot from never being dry. The smell would make a cesspit cleaner wretch. And here's the truly insane part. This is the easy journey. Wait until you're sailing back with holds full of plunder and slaves. The screaming of captives crammed into spaces meant for cargo. The wounded dying slowly from septic wounds because there's no room to treat them properly. The paranoia that your fellow raiders might murder you for your share of the loot. That's when the real fun begins. But for now, you just try to survive another hour without vomiting up what little water you've managed to keep down. The English coast can't come soon enough. At least when you're fighting monks, you're not trapped in this floating torture chamber, marinating in human misery while pretending this is somehow glorious. The sagas sing of brave warriors crossing the whale road. The reality is 60 men slowly going insane in a wooden shell filled with their own waste, praying to any god who'll listen that they'll see land before they start eating each other. The sacrificial grove stinks of death, old death, new death, and the peculiar smell of death in progress. 9 bodies hang from the sacred oak, in various stages of decay. The freshest is still twitching, though he's been up there since dawn. The oldest is just bones held together by sinew and scraps of cloth. This is Uppsala, the holiest site in the Viking world, and you're here for the 9-year festival where the gods demand blood, lots of blood. You've seen death before, violent death, accidental death, the slow death of disease and starvation. But this is different. This is industrial-scale killing wrapped in religious ceremony. Every 9 years, the kings and jarls gather here to feed the gods with sacrifice. 9 of every type of male creature must hang for 9 days. 9 horses, 9 dogs, 9 roosters, and yes, 9 men. The trees are so full of corpses that branches break under the weight. The first sacrifice of the morning is a thrall who probably thought he was lucky to be selected for temple service. He's wrong. They drag him to the altar, and he's not going quietly. He knows what's coming. Everyone knows about Uppsala. The priests have to break his legs to stop him running. The crowd cheers. This is entertainment as much as worship. Your little sister, barely 8, watches with the same fascination she'd give a particularly interesting beetle. The killing method is specific and horrible. First, they stun him with a hammer blow to the head, not enough to kill, just enough to stop the struggling. Then comes the noose, specially woven from the intestines of previous sacrifices. They hoist him up, but not high enough for a quick neck snap. He needs to dance for the gods, they say. The jerking and twitching can last an hour. Children throw stones to make him dance more, but hanging is just the beginning, while he's still kicking. The blood eagle begins. You've heard of this ritual, but seeing it makes your breakfast of rotten fish rise in your throat. They cut open his back, break the ribs away from the spine, and pull out the lungs like wings. Still alive, somehow, still moving. The priests say the gods prefer their sacrifices conscious for as long as possible. The screaming stops only when they finally cut his throat to collect blood for the ceremony. This blood gets everywhere. Priests splash it on the altar, the trees, the gathered crowd. You're supposed to feel blessed when the hot blood hits your face, Instead, you feel the thrall's last meal. Looks like he had porridge. The blood is collected in special bowls made from human skulls. They're mixed with ale for the warriors to drink. They tell you it brings Odin's favor. It tastes like liquid copper and terror. The really sick part is how organized it all is. There's a schedule: horse sacrifices in the morning, dogs after midday, men in the evening when the light is right for the blood to look properly dramatic. Between killings, there's feasting and drinking. Merchants sell wooden carvings of the hanging god right next to the actual hanging bodies. Children play a game where they pretend to sacrifice each other. Your cousin wins by making the most realistic death gurgles. You watch them prepare the next victim, a Christian priest captured from a raid last summer. They've been keeping him specifically for this festival. He's praying in his foreign tongue, clutching a wooden cross. The Vikings find this hilarious. They make bets on whether he'll call for his Christ or Odin when the blood eagle starts. The betting favors Odin. Everyone breaks eventually. The women have their own rituals happening simultaneously. Your mother and sisters are at the temple, offering hair and fingernails to Freya, but women can be sacrifices too, especially if they're slaves or volunteers. You see a young thrall woman, maybe 15, dressed in the finest clothes she'll ever wear. She's drunk on special mushroom ale, swaying and singing. She thinks she's going to be Odin's bride in Valhalla. The matrons pat her head and tell her how lucky she is while sharpening the ritual knives. Here's what the sanitized retellings miss. Voluntary sacrifices are never really voluntary. That girl has been groomed for this since capture. Daily indoctrination about the honor of dying for the gods. Drugs that make death seem beautiful. Social pressure that makes refusing impossible. By the time she climbs onto the altar, she genuinely believes this is her choice. The knife goes in under her ribs, angled up to the heart. She smiles as she dies. The crowd declares it a good omen. Historians still argue whether the blood eagle was real or Christian propaganda. But they're missing the forest for the trees. Even without exotic torture methods, Viking sacrifice was systematic horror. The grove at Uppsala has been used for so long that the soil is black with blood. Dogs won't eat the meat that grows here. Birds avoid the trees, but every 9 years, hundreds gather to add more corpses to the collection. The worst part is your own numbness to it all. By the third day, you're stepping over puddles of blood without noticing. The screaming becomes background noise. You eat your meals while watching disembowelment, commenting on the priest's technique like it's a craft demonstration. Your little sister has started a collection of finger bones that fall from the decomposing bodies. Your mother helps her clean them. This is normal. This is holy. This is how you talk to the gods. The festival reaches its climax with the king himself performing a sacrifice. The victim is a Jarl who lost a Holmgang duel, technically voluntary, since he agreed to the stakes. The king opens his throat with a gold knife, while priests catch the blood in silver bowls. This blood is special, noble blood, worth more to the gods than 100 thralls. They paint it on the altar, the sacred trees, the watching crowd. You lick it from your lips and taste power and iron. As you leave Uppsala, you pass through the grove one last time. 90 bodies now hang from the trees, the required number plus some extras for good measure. The smell follows you for miles. Your clothes are stiff with dried blood that won't wash out. Your dreams will feature hanging men for months, but you'll be back in 9 years, maybe with sacrifices of your own to offer. The gods are always hungry, and Vikings are nothing if not reliable feeders of divine appetite. The monastery appears through morning fog like a gift from the gods, isolated, wealthy, and defended by nothing but prayers and wooden walls. Your fellow raiders grin, fingering their axes. This is what you came for. Not glory or adventure, but simple economics. Those monks have gold, silver, and food stores that your family needs to survive another winter. The fact that you'll have to wade through blood to get it. That's just the cost of doing business in the Viking Age. The attack begins at dawn, because terrified people make poor fighters. 60 Vikings against maybe 30 monks and whatever farmers happen to be nearby. The first wave hits the wooden gate with axes, and it splinters like kindling. You pour through, and immediately the screaming starts. Not war cries, that's your side. The monks scream like animals at slaughter, which is essentially what they are. Your first kill is a boy, maybe 14, running for the bell tower to sound the alarm. You catch him 10 feet from his goal, axe taking him in the spine. He drops, twitching, trying to crawl with legs that no longer work. You finish him with a thrust to the neck, quick and efficient. No hatred, no anger, just work. He had the misfortune of being between you and profit. The blood sprays across your face, warm and metallic. You don't even wipe it off. The real carnage happens in the church. Monks and villagers have barricaded themselves inside, thinking their God will protect them. Your Jarl laughs and sets the roof on fire. Now they have a choice: burn or come out. They choose burning at first, singing their strange songs while smoke fills the building. But survival instinct beats faith every time. When they finally burst out, coughing and retching, we're waiting. What follows would make a butcher sick. No battle tactics, no honor, just efficient slaughter. A monk tries to protect a gold cross, clutching it to his chest. Bjorn splits his skull and takes the cross from his twitching fingers. An old priest mumbles prayers while Eric opens his belly, intestines spilling onto consecrated ground. Women run from the dormitory, and the raiders whoop with delight. Rape first, slavery after. That's the Viking way. You corner 3 monks in the scriptorium, surrounded by their precious books. They're trying to save the manuscripts, as if vellum and ink matter when death walks through the door. You hesitate for a moment. They're not fighting back, just crying over their books. Then you remember your starving sister, your dying father, the empty food stores back home. Your axe goes through the first monk's neck like butter. The second tries to run. The third just kneels and waits. You oblige him. Here's what the sagas don't capture: the sounds. Not just screaming. Anyone can scream. It's the wet sounds. The splash of blood on stone. The particular noise a blade makes going through flesh and hitting bone. The gurgle of a cut throat trying to breathe. The pop of joints separating. These sounds follow you home, show up in quiet moments for the rest of your life. But you learn to live with them because the alternative is watching your family starve. The systematic looting begins while some monks are still dying. You're assigned to the church treasury, and it's better than you dreamed. Gold chalices, silver plates, jeweled crosses, more wealth than your entire village has seen in generations. You stuff your bag until it's almost too heavy to carry. Each piece means food for your family, weapons for defense, maybe enough left over to buy a thrall to help with the farming. But Vikings don't just take treasure, we take everything. The stored grain meant to feed the monastery through winter, loaded onto carts. The sheep and cattle, driven to the ships. The brewing equipment, disassembled and packed. Even the iron nails from the doors. Metal is precious. By the time we're done, nothing useful remains. The survivors, if any, will starve come winter. That's their problem. The human cargo gets sorted like livestock. Young women for slaves and breeding. They'll fetch good prices at market, skilled craftsmen. If we can identify them, are valuable. Children young enough to forget their homes make excellent thralls. The rest, the old, the sick, the difficult, they're just problems that need solving. Your sword solves several such problems. It's not personal, it's resource management. One monk catches your attention. He's young, maybe your age, and he's not crying or praying. He's watching, memorizing faces. You realize he's planning to survive, to bear witness. Can't have that. You walk over, and he doesn't flinch when you raise your axe. "I forgive you," he says in broken Norse. The words mean nothing. Forgiveness is a Christian concept, weak and useless. Your axe explains the Viking perspective on forgiveness. The burning starts when everything valuable is secured. Fire is the final insult, ensuring the survivors can't rebuild. You help splash whale oil on the walls, throw torches onto thatched roofs. The scriptorium burns brightest, centuries of knowledge turning to ash because knowledge doesn't fill bellies or buy swords. You watch illuminated manuscripts curl and blacken. Years of monks' work destroyed in minutes. Good. Let them spend their time rebuilding instead of spreading their weak religion. Your cousin finds the monastery's mead stores, and soon half the raiders are drunk on stolen honey wine. The violence gets sloppier, crueler. What started as efficient raiding becomes sport. They make the surviving monks race for their lives, taking bets on who can put an arrow through a running target. They force brothers to fight each other for the chance to live. Spoiler, neither survives. The winner gets a knife in the back while celebrating. By noon, it's over. The monastery is a smoking ruin decorated with corpses. The ships are loaded with everything that wasn't nailed down, and quite a few things that were. Human cargo is chained in the hold. They're sobbing, muffled by the deckboards. You're richer than you've ever been. Your share of the plunder enough to see your family through 2 winters at least. This is the reality of Viking raiding. Not epic battles between warriors, but armed thugs attacking defenseless religious communities. The sagas dress it up with talk of honor and glory. But you were there, you know the truth. It was butchery for profit, justified by the simple fact that they had what you needed and couldn't stop you from taking it. Tomorrow you'll hit another monastery, and another after that, until the ships can't hold any more plunder, or until someone finally organizes enough resistance to make raiding unprofitable. The accusation comes at the morning assembly. Thorstein Goatbeard stole my best axe. Your neighbor, red-faced and spitting, points at you before the entire village. The penalty for theft is severe, outlawry, which means anyone can kill you without consequence. But Viking justice isn't about truth or evidence. It's about surviving the ordeal that determines guilt, and the trials make torture look like gentle questioning. The law speaker, ancient and blind in one eye, outlines your options. You can find 12 men to swear oaths that you're innocent. Good luck with that when everyone knows you've been eyeing that axe for months. You can pay triple the axe's value in silver. Impossible since your last raid share went to buying grain. Or you can prove your innocence through ordeal. The crowd leans forward. They love a good ordeal. It's better than bear baiting. You choose the hot iron, because drowning takes too long and combat means facing Thorstein, who's killed 4 men in Holmgang duels. The preparation is simple. The priest heats an iron bar in the forge until it glows like a tiny sun. You must carry it 9 paces. Then have your hands bound for 3 days. If the burns heal clean, you're innocent. If they fester, which burns always do in a world without antibiotics, You're guilty, and they'll take your hand as punishment. The iron is ready. The priest holds it up with tongs, and you can feel the heat from 6 feet away. The crowd places bets. Most favor festering, since everyone knows you're guilty as sin. Your mother watches from the women's section, her face carefully neutral. Show fear, and you're assumed guilty. Show pain, and you're weak. The only winning move is to pretend red-hot metal doesn't hurt. You grab the iron. The pain is immediate and indescribable. Not just burning, but the smell of your own flesh cooking. Your palm sticks to the metal, skin peeling away as you lift it. 9 paces. 1. Your vision goes white. 2. You can hear your skin sizzling like bacon. 3. Blood runs between your fingers where the flesh has split. 4. Someone in the crowd vomits from the smell. 5. Your legs shake but you can't fall. 6. The bone is visible through the cooked meat of your palm. 7. You're screaming but can't hear it. 8. Almost there. 9. You drop the iron and collapse. They wrap your hands in dirty linen soaked in sheep's urine. Their idea of medical care. The pain doesn't stop. It gets worse as the nerves realize what happened. For 3 days, you sit in agony while infection inevitably sets in. Viking justice doesn't care about truth. It cares about spectacle. And watching someone's hands rot off certainly qualifies. But you get lucky. Your cousin Erica was accused of murdering his brother last winter and chose trial by combat. The Holmgang circle is drawn, about 12 feet across, marked with hazel rods. Step outside and you forfeit. First blood usually wins, but Erica's opponent demanded death stakes. The dispute is over a woman, naturally. She watches from the crowd, not looking particularly pleased that men are dying for her honor. The rules are simple, because Vikings like their violence straightforward. 3 shields each. When all shields are broken, it's sword work until someone dies. No armor except a leather cap. You can have a second to hold your shields, but if he gets killed by a wild swing, that's his problem. The crowd forms a circle, close enough to get splashed with blood. They've brought snacks. Erica's opponent is Sigurd Skullsplitter, named for obvious reasons. He's fought 17 Holmgangs and never lost. Erica has fought none and pisses himself a little as they begin. The first shield exchange is brutal. Sigurd doesn't just break shields. He aims to shatter the arm holding them. Erica's first shield explodes in splinters, driving wood through his forearm. His second lasts 1 blow. The third breaks along with 2 of his fingers. Now it's sword work, and Erica is already crippled. His shield arm hangs useless, fingers bent at impossible angles. Sigurd could end it quickly, but he's playing to the crowd. A cut across the thigh that opens the artery, a slash that takes off Erica's ear. The crowd cheers each wound. This is justice as entertainment, law as blood sport. The end is predictable. Sigurd opens Erica's belly with an upward thrust. Erica tries to hold his intestines in, but they slip through his fingers like bloody ropes. He falls to his knees, then forward. Sigurd claims victory, Erica's property, and the woman who started it all. She doesn't look happy about her new owner, but her opinion doesn't matter. The law has spoken through violence. Your own hands have been unwrapped. The burns are black and weeping yellow pus, definitely infected by any reasonable standard. But the priest, who has a vested interest in not angering your family, declares them healing cleanly by the God's will. You keep your hands and your reputation, though you'll never hold a sword properly again. The twisted scars will mark you forever as someone who grabbed hot iron and survived. In Viking logic, This makes you innocent. In reality, it just makes you stubborn and lucky. The worst ordeal is the water trial. They tie your thumbs to your toes and throw you in the river. Float and you're guilty. The pure water rejects your criminal body. Sink and you're innocent. If they pull you out in time, last month, they let Olaf One-Eye stay under a bit too long. He was declared innocent posthumously, which was nice for his reputation, but rough on his breathing. This is Viking justice, trial by torture, verdict by violence, and execution as entertainment. The thing that determines guilt isn't evidence or witnesses. It's how much pain you can endure, how well you can fight, or how long you can hold your breath. Your burned hands throb with every heartbeat, a permanent reminder that in the Viking age, justice and sadism are the same word pronounced differently. But here's the truly sick part. Everyone prefers it this way. A proper trial with evidence and testimony. Boring. No blood, no spectacle, no chance to bet on the outcome. Where's the fun in that? Vikings want their justice like they want their entertainment. Brutal, immediate, and with a high body count. Your burned hands are a small price to pay for a good show. Next time, though, you'll make sure to actually steal the axe. If you're going to grab hot iron, might as well be guilty of something. The first sign something's wrong is when your little brother's shit turns white. Not pale, white like fresh snow, which would be beautiful if it weren't coming out of a 6-year-old who's been screaming for 3 days straight. His belly is distended like a pregnant woman's, and when you press it gently, something moves under the skin. Not the normal gurgle of digestion, something alive, coiling and shifting like a snake made of nightmares. Your mother calls for the healing woman, but everyone already knows what this is, worms. Not the little ones that everyone has. Those are just part of life, like lice and fleas. These are the big ones, the kind that eat you from the inside out. Your brother probably got them from that piece of fresh pork last month. The one that looked a little too pink but tasted too good to throw away. In Viking times, every meal is a gamble with parasites, and your brother just lost big. The treatment is worse than the disease. They force him to drink a concoction of wormwood, tansy, and something that smells like rotting fish mixed with sheep bile. He vomits immediately, bringing up 2 feet of something that looks like a white ribbon but moves with purpose. The healer nods approvingly. Good. The mother worm is coming up. Mother worm, meaning there are children still inside. Your brother screams as more emerge, some through his mouth, others through, other exits. But worms are just the beginning of your disease buffet. Your cousin arrives from a trading expedition with something new and exciting. Pustules that weep black fluid and smell like a battlefield 3 days after the fighting stopped. Within a week, half the village is covered in similar sores. They call it the rotting disease, and it spreads faster than gossip. The healers try everything, burning the pustules with hot iron, packing them with spider webs and moldy bread, even bleeding the victims until they faint. Nothing works. People just rot away piece by piece, still walking and talking while parts of them turn black and fall off. The real killer, though, is what starts as a cough. Your uncle brought it back from the last raid, and now it's spreading through the longhouse like wildfire. First, just a tickle in the throat, then coughing that brings up phlegm mixed with blood. By the end, victims are drowning in their own liquids, lungs so full of fluid they can only breathe in tiny, desperate gasps. You watch your aunt die over the course of 2 weeks, her face turning blue as she slowly suffocates in open air. Winter makes everything worse. 40 people crammed into one longhouse becomes a disease factory. someone coughs, and within days everyone's coughing. The hall fever spread so fast you can actually watch it move through the building, starting at one end with the thralls and working its way up to the Jarl's family. Democracy through disease. The symptoms are always the same. Fever that makes victims see demons, shit that turns to water, and a rash that looks like someone painted runes on the skin with blood. Your sister develops the flux, constant diarrhea that turns her into a skeleton within days. The smell is indescribable, and in a one-room house, there's no escape. She shits herself to death while the family watches, unable to help beyond forcing her to drink water that just comes straight back out. By the end, she's delirious, talking to people who died years ago. Maybe she can see them. Maybe the veil gets thin when you're leaking your life out through your ass. The children's diseases are especially cruel. Your neighbor's baby develops the jaw death, tetanus from a dirty knife used to cut the birth cord. The infant's body locks up like a twisted piece of wood, back arched so severely you could pass a shield under it. Every muscle contracted at once, including the ones needed for breathing. It takes 4 days to die. 4 days of a baby frozen in a silent scream. The mother goes mad from watching. They find her trying to nurse the corpse a week later. Here's what the sagas don't tell you about Viking warriors. Most of them are walking disease factories. Your father has a cough that's lasted 3 years and produces chunks of lung tissue. Your older brother's battle wound never healed right. It weeps pus constantly and smells like death. Every adult you know has some chronic infection, parasite, or disease they just live with because what's the alternative? Death? That's coming anyway. The livestock diseases jump to humans with disturbing regularity. That cow with the foaming mouth and wild eyes. 3 weeks later, your cousin has the same symptoms. The rabbits that died en masse last summer. Now children are dying the same way, bleeding from every orifice while their organs turn to mush. No one understands transmission vectors or species barriers. They just know that when the animals start dying, people follow. The real horror is the skin diseases. Vikings are covered in rashes, boils, and open sores that never heal. Your father has something living in his beard, not lice. Something bigger that builds actual tunnels you can see through the skin. Your mother's scalp is more scab than skin, constantly weeping and itching. Everyone scratches until they bleed, then scratches the scabs, creating a cycle of infection that only ends with death or amputation. The worst outbreak happens during the harvest festival. Someone brings foreign mead, and within hours, everyone who drank it is screaming about fire in their bellies. Then comes the vomiting. Not normal vomiting, but bringing up pieces of stomach lining. The flux follows, but it's not shit coming out. It's blood and chunks of intestine. 20 people die in 3 days. And the survivors are never right again. They can only eat thin gruel, and even that causes agony. This is daily life in the Viking Age, not dying gloriously in battle, but watching your family rot from the inside out. Every cough could be your last. Every meal might contain the parasite that eats you alive. Every cut could go septic and kill you in days. The human body becomes a battlefield where invisible enemies wage constant war. And you're usually losing. Your little brother survives the worms, but he's different now, thin as a skeleton, aged beyond his years. He's seen things crawl out of his own body that shouldn't exist. He knows he's made of meat that other creatures want to eat. That knowledge changes a person, especially a child. He doesn't play anymore. He just sits and watches his belly, waiting for the next horror to emerge. The blood eagle was just the beginning. Your uncle discovers his thrall has been stealing grain, just a handful, enough to keep from starving, and by Viking law, he has every right to kill him, but death isn't enough. This requires a lesson, something the other thralls will remember. So he calls the family together for what can only be described as recreational torture disguised as justice. They stake the thrall out in the yard, spread eagle in the mud. Your uncle starts with the fingers, removing them joint by joint with the same knife used for butchering pigs. The thrall screams until his voice breaks, then makes these thin, whistling sounds that somehow seem worse. Your little sister is forced to watch. She needs to learn, your mother says. The girl is 6. She'll have nightmares about fingers for the rest of her short life. But this is amateur hour compared to real Viking justice. Your cousin Bjorn killed a man from another clan last summer, and now there's a blood feud. In civilized societies, this might involve compensation or legal proceedings. In Viking society, it means 3 generations of reciprocal murder until everyone forgets who started it, or one family line goes extinct, usually both. The retaliation comes at your nephew's wedding. Everything seems fine until the toast. When Bjorn starts frothing at the mouth, poison, probably mushroom, based on how his pupils dilate before he dies. His brothers immediately grab weapons. The hall erupts. What was a celebration becomes a slaughter. Wedding guests hacking at each other while the bride cowers under the table, her dress soaking up the blood of men who were laughing together moments before. Your family wins this round, killing 4 of theirs, including the suspected poisoner. But everyone knows this is just one battle in a war that will outlive them all. Next month, maybe next year, someone from your family will die at a market, or in their bed, or at another celebration-turned-massacre. The children grow up knowing they've inherited not just property, but murder obligations. Your newborn son already has enemies who want him dead for things that happened before he was conceived. The really sick part is how casual betrayal becomes. Your father's best friend, his shield brother who saved his life in 3 different raids, murders him over a disputed property line. 20 years of friendship ended with an axe to the skull while your father slept. The killer shows up at the funeral, pays the blood money, and everyone acts normal because that's how Viking society works. Personal loyalty means nothing when balanced against profit or honor. Your sister's husband beats her so badly she loses her left eye. She comes home, seeking protection. Your brothers discuss it and decide the alliance with her husband's family is more valuable than her depth perception. They send her back with a warning to be more obedient. 6 months later, she's dead. Fell down, according to her husband. Everyone knows he threw her down, repeatedly, until things broke that couldn't be fixed. Your family accepts the compensation payment. Business as usual. But family betrayal gets worse. Inheritance disputes turn brothers into mortal enemies. Your cousin murders his father for the family farm, making it look like a raiding injury. Everyone knows the truth, but proving it would require a trial by ordeal. And the cousin is young and strong while the accusers are old and weak. So he gets away with patricide and farms the land his father's blood fertilized. The concept of fostering, sending children to be raised by other families, seems nice until you realize it's often a hostage exchange. Your nephew is fostered with a family 2 fjords over. When your clan raids their neighbors, the foster family sends back your nephew's finger as a warning. Next time, it'll be his head. Your brother wants to retrieve his son, but that would mean admitting weakness. So the boy stays, minus a finger. Learning that family bonds are just another currency in the Viking economy of violence. Winter is peak betrayal season. Resources get scarce, and suddenly your brother-in-law is eyeing your grain stores. You catch him trying to poison your well. If your family dies of bad water, he inherits. The confrontation ends with him bleeding out in the snow while your sister watches, torn between grief for her husband and relief that her children will eat this winter. She helps drag his body to the wolves. Can't waste calories on burial when you're starving. The worst betrayals involve children. Your neighbor sells his daughter to clear a debt, knowing the buyer's reputation for violence. She's 11. When her broken body is returned 3 months later, the father counts his silver and calls it a fair trade. Another family leaves their newborn exposed on a hillside. Too many mouths already, and this one was born wrong somehow. The wolves take care of what the parents couldn't stomach doing themselves. Your own brother suggests killing your aging mother. She can't work anymore, barely eats, but still consumes resources. It would be merciful, he argues. A quick death instead of slow starvation. You have to sleep with your axe after that conversation, wondering if he'll decide you're also too much of a burden. Family meetings become tense affairs where everyone counts exits and keeps weapons close. The sagas glorify blood feuds as matters of honor, but living through one is just exhausting terror. You can't trust anyone, not even blood relatives. Every meal could be poisoned. Every night could bring assassins. Every friendship is temporary, lasting only until someone offers a better deal. Children learn to sleep light and trust nobody. Marriages are just alliances waiting to be betrayed. Love is a luxury none can afford. This is the social fabric of Viking society, a web of betrayals held together by the threat of worse betrayals. Your uncle killed his thrall this morning for stealing grain. Tonight, your uncle's son will poison him for the inheritance. Tomorrow, you'll help cover it up because you need the son's support in your own feud. Round and round it goes, a wheel of murder and revenge that grinds everyone to dust eventually. Your mother was right about one thing. Your sister did need to watch that thrall lose his fingers. Not to learn about justice, but to understand that in Viking society, everyone is just meat waiting to be butchered. The only question is who holds the knife when your time comes. Smart money says it'll be someone you trust. The funeral preparations begin while your father is still gurgling his last breaths. No time for grief. Death in Viking society is a production that requires planning, resources, and at least one human sacrifice. Your mother is already eyeing the thralls, deciding which one will have the honor of joining your father in the afterlife. The Irish girl knows it'll be her. She's young, pretty, and your father showed her too much favor. She starts trembling the moment his breathing stops. They dress your father's corpse in his finest clothes, which isn't saying much. Wool tunic stained with the blood of his enemies and his own failing body. His weapons are arranged around him, the sword that hasn't been sharp since you were born, the axe that took 17 lives and 2 of his fingers when he missed a swing. They put silver coins on his eyes, not for the ferryman, but to keep them from opening during the ceremony. Nothing ruins a funeral like a corpse that seems to be watching. The boat burning everyone imagines. That's for jarls and kings. Your father gets a hole in the ground, but at least it's a big hole. The thralls dig for 2 days. Your father's body meanwhile stored in the coldest part of the longhouse. By day 3, he's starting to turn. The smell mixing with the incense they're burning to mask it. Your little sister asks why father looks green. Nobody answers her. Here's where it gets properly horrific. The Irish girl isn't going alone. She needs to be prepared for her journey as your father's eternal servant. This preparation involves every man in the family taking turns with her over 3 days. They call it sanctifying her for the afterlife. She calls it nothing because they've sewn her mouth shut to stop the screaming. By the time they're done, she's catatonic, which they interpret as the gods already calling her spirit. Convenient. The actual killing is almost merciful compared to what came before. They strangle her with a rope made from your father's hair. Waste not, want not. She doesn't struggle. Whatever made her human died during the preparation. They arrange her body next to your father's in the grave, positioning her hands to look like she's serving him mead. Someone jokes about the quality of afterlife service. Everyone laughs. Your mother laughs loudest. But wait, there's more. Your father needs provisions for his journey, so they slaughter his horse, badly. The thrall assigned to the task is shaking so hard he only wounds it, and the horse screams and thrashes, spraying blood over the funeral guests. It takes 4 more men to finish the job, and by then everyone's covered in gore. They dump the still twitching carcass in the grave. The afterlife apparently needs transportation. The dogs go next. Your father's 2 hunting hounds. They trust the handler right up until the knife goes in. One dies clean. The other runs 3 circles trailing its intestines before collapsing at your mother's feet. She steps over it without looking down. Can't have father hunting without his dogs in Valhalla. The fact that these were the same dogs your little sister played with yesterday. Irrelevant. Death demands death, and Vikings always pay their debts. Now for the grave goods. Kaikids. Everything your father might need in the afterlife gets buried with him, which is economically insane when your family is already starving. His best shield, his drinking horn, enough food to feed the living for a week. Your mother adds her wedding ring, not from sentiment, but because tradition demands it. She'll need to remarry quickly, and keeping the old ring would curse the new marriage. Viking pragmatism at its finest. The really sick part is the children's participation. Your 8-year-old brother has to throw the first handful of dirt, symbolically burying his father and becoming the man of the house. His hand shakes. Tears run down his face. Your uncle slaps him hard enough to leave a mark. Men don't cry at funerals, he growls. The boy chokes back his sobs and throws the dirt. Another childhood dies in that moment. As they fill the grave, your cousin starts the funeral games, because nothing honors the dead like watching the living beat each other bloody. Wrestling matches where bones break. Knife throwing where accidents settle old scores. Your uncle takes the opportunity to challenge your father's brother to holmgang over an inheritance dispute. They'll fight tomorrow on your father's fresh grave. The winner gets the farm. The loser gets buried next to him. The feast afterwards is worse than any battle. Everyone's drunk on mead and grief. A dangerous combination. Old feuds resurface. Your father's war buddies tell stories that start funny and end with someone getting stabbed. Your aunt accuses your mother of poisoning your father to inherit early. Weapons are drawn. Blood mixes with spilled ale on the table where your father carved his children's names. But the worst is yet to come. 3 days after burial, they'll check the grave to ensure your father's properly dead. Sometimes bodies bloat and shift, making it seem like they're trying to escape. If this happens, they'll dig him up and put a stake through his chest, just to be sure. The Irish girl, she definitely won't be moving, but they'll stake her anyway. Can't have servant ghosts wandering around without their masters. This is how Vikings honor their dead, with rape, murder, and enough violence to make the living grateful they're still breathing. Your father's funeral cost your family 3 thralls, 2 dogs, a horse, and enough grave goods to survive another winter. The Irish girl's family will never know what happened to her. She's just another missing daughter in a world that swallows women whole. The ceremony ends with everyone swearing oaths to your dead father, promising to maintain his feuds, honor his alliances, and basically continue the cycle of violence that killed him in the first place. Your 8-year-old brother, new head of household, swears to avenge insults your father received before the boy was even born. The crowd cheers. Another generation locked into the wheel of murder and revenge. As the guests stagger home, you look back at the fresh grave mound. Somewhere down there, your father lies surrounded by the corpses of those who served him in life. The Irish girl's dead eyes stare into eternal darkness. The dogs have already started to rot. This is Viking honor, a pile of corpses pretending to be a religious ceremony. Your mother is already discussing remarriage prospects with your aunt. Your father's not even cold in the ground. But widows don't have the luxury of mourning. She needs a new husband before winter, someone to protect the farm and prevent your uncles from taking everything. Love has nothing to do with it. Neither did your father's funeral. Both are just business transactions paid in blood and flesh. Tonight you'll dream of the Irish girl's face during the preparation, the way something behind her eyes just stopped. Tomorrow, another funeral. Next week, another. The wheel of death keeps turning, grinding bones to dust and dreams to nightmares. This is how Vikings die, not in glorious battle, but in squalid ceremonies that make the living wish they were dead too. Welcome to the Viking Age, where death isn't an ending, but an excuse for more death. Your father's funeral is over. The trauma is just beginning. Time to get some sleep. If you can stop hearing the sound of dogs screaming and silver coins clicking on dead eyes. The longhouse grows quiet now as our brutal journey through Viking reality comes to its close. You've survived, barely, this glimpse into a world where childhood meant dodging axes, where breakfast could kill you, where justice was torture and death was theatre. The fire burns lower in the hearth, casting softer shadows on walls that have witnessed so much suffering. Your breathing slows. The harsh images begin to fade like frost melting from a window pane. That young warrior with the scarred hands, that mother grinding wool until her fingers bled, that small boy watching worms emerge from his own body. They're all settling back into the mists of history where they belong. Let their struggles drift away from your modern mind. You're safe in your bed, 1,000 years removed from their daily horrors. No raiders will come with the dawn. No children will train with real swords tomorrow. The violence, disease, and betrayal that define their every waking moment can't touch you here. Their world of constant death and suffering fades, until it's just a story told in the darkness. Your pillow is soft, not the lice-infested furs of a longhouse. Your room is warm without the stench of 40 unwashed bodies. You'll wake tomorrow to a world of plenty, of medicine, of justice, without ordeal. The Viking Age, with all its brutality, remains locked safely in the past. Let sleep wash away the blood and horror. Let your dreams be gentle, filled with peace. Those ancient warriors never knew. Their nightmare is over. Your rest begins now. Close your eyes and be grateful for the centuries that separate you from their savage world. Sleep well, modern dreamer. Sleep well.